What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA show. And today's video is all about Colby Covington, who is the last fighter to have fought for the UFC. Literally fought against Joaquin Buckley in the main event at Tampa Bay. And that was the last fight of 2024. And as such, I think he's on the mind of a lot of folks as he had a pretty unsuccessful fight against Joaquin Buckley. Got pieced up pretty badly, had moments of success, but overall, I think was more or less dominated and had some interesting moments with the tornado kick. I think he did get Buckley on the ground at one point, but I think with the exception of him and Chael Sonnen, everybody agrees that it was a fairly one-sided affair. Congrats to Joaquin Buckley. But to me, this has prompted a greater internal thought process about Colby Covington, who he is, what he's become. And how did he get there? How did he get to this point where he seems to be, I mean, of course, he appears to be obviously delusional in the things that he says, but I always thought that was by intent, that he was almost doing that for comedic effect, saying outlandish things that were clearly ridiculous, saying that he had a broken foot in the Leon Edwards fight and making up excuses for why he lost and why he performed the way he did. And now talking about altitude sickness against, I think, the Kamaru Usman fighter, maybe Leon Edwards, but just coming out with a litany of excuses. And I almost thought it was just to make people mad, and it was just to rile people up because people get aggravated with these types of excuses. And that was part of the quote unquote character of Colby Covington. And that's what I've been trying to understand and get my head around, is where does the real Colby begin and where does the character begin? And or are they starting to meld? And we've heard Joe Rogan talk about this idea of sometimes when you do this really intense form of method acting or taking on a character or the role of a character, sometimes you can start to become that person, adopt those mannerisms, etc. And so that's the question that I started to have is that what's happening to Colby? Is that why he's getting more and more outlandish with the things he says? And are we at a point now where we just have to look at the things he says and they're just not right. They're not correct. They're pretty terrible. Some of the things he said about people, and he doesn't hold back. And now I think we just have to come to terms that whether or not he's acting to go out and say things that are actually legitimate things he's saying about people, highly, highly negative and insightful phrases and statements he's making about people. They're just so negative that whether or not it's a character or what's really happening, I think we have to admit that he's just kind of not really acting as a good guy. I mean, I just don't think whatever is happening, I think we've now, and I used to find Colby entertaining, so I'm just trying to get my head around this whole thing. And I always thought it was just all for show, and people would say, but behind the scenes, he's really nice, but maybe that's the act. And I don't know. And that's kind of what this video is about, just diving deeper into who is Colby Covington. But I'll tell you at the front, I think that there's some sort of a combination. I think that he had some of these tendencies, maybe some dishonesty, maybe some issues in terms of loyalty and just character issues, it seems. And I'm not saying this from personal knowledge. I don't know the guy. I'm trying to piece this together from what several people that knew him from way back in the day in his college days said about him, and trying to piece this puzzle together to really get an understanding of who he is. And I think that it seems like maybe there were always some issues, maybe some character flaws or things like that from Colby's past. I don't know why or where they came from, but then they've seemed to have been exacerbated over time, perhaps by playing this character, quote unquote character, which he of himself admits is just a heightened version of himself. And perhaps now we come to this point where Colby's just completely outlandish, also is almost essentially become a pathological liar, which again, I thought was all for show. And I thought he knew he was lying and saying outlandish things, but now I just don't, I think he may have even lost touch with reality. And I'm going to go through a bunch of reasons and videos, and we're even going to look through a paper from Journal of Psychology as well, talking about what can happen to people when they do this intense type of method acting. See if we can kind of get to the bottom of what's really going on with Colby Covington and why he is the way he is now, or maybe always has been. But without further ado, let's just rewind back. We're going to go back. We know that Colby talks incessantly, horrendously badly about Jon Jones. And this is a clip back in the day before he had this character turn. And maybe in this clip, he's being insincere. I don't know. But just to rewind the clock back to what Colby used to be like, just kind of a very traditional fighter, seeking the belt, looking for success in this athletic endeavor. So let's take a listen here. Old Colby Covington.
Colby, you obviously, Jon Jones is supposed to be the main event of this card. You obviously have a unique relationship and history with him. What did you make of everything that happened to him?
You know, it's unfortunate. You know, he was a really good friend in college. We spent 2 years sharing a bunk bed together. So I was hoping he was going to be here. I thought we were going to get to have a little, coming together again, like in college when we were winning wrestling matches together. So it kind of sucks that happened, but, I hope he learns from his mistakes. I said on Twitter, it's unfortunate that he hasn't learned from his mistakes. And, that's just, I wasn't trying to take a jab at it. I'm just, I just being honest. I want him to learn from his mistakes, and I want him as a person to be able to pull himself out of this.
So talking about Jon Jones, this might have been when he had the issue with the hit and run potentially. I don't know exactly when this was or what had transpired that he's referring to, but he's talking about Jon Jones in a fairly respectful way and being just a normal guy, more or less, at least outwardly, whether or not that's really what's going on internally. But then now we come to the next clip. Okay. Oops, let me back this up here. So now we come to the next clip of him talking about Jon Jones today. Here, let's check this out. Here we go.
He's ducking Aspen also. He doesn't want to fight the guys he knows he's getting his ass whooped against. So I don't think anything special to Jon Jones. He's a fucking coward. He's a cheat, and he's a woman beater. He needs to stop beating his wife and leaving her bloody in Las Vegas hotel rooms.
Now just going in deep. And this has sort of been the progression. This is what has happened. He's now fully embodied this quote unquote character. And again, this is what we're coming to is this a character? Is this the real Colby Covington? Is the truth somewhere in between? But needless to say, he's saying outlandish things. And he's not just saying nonsense. He's saying things that are rooted and grounded in reality that are causing a lot of pain probably. And you can say what you want about maybe you hate Jon Jones and maybe you hate him for these events that have transpired and whatnot. Again, I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know the reality of these situations. I wasn't there. I haven't dug through the police reports. All I'm saying is you can clearly see, I mean, Colby is one of the very few people that talk so openly and negatively in this light about these horrendous things and just goes at people with sort of no restraint. And whatever you want to say about Jon Jones, I mean, this is just one person that he's attacking, but he attacks without mercy and says really, really nasty stuff. And I think we can all agree that it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad the way he talks about people and treats people. So anyways, we can continue on one more example. Now, this is somebody and this is something that he's defended as well. And I don't think Leon Edwards deserved this by any means. Now, Colby went on and said, oh, but Leon Edwards' dad did this and did that. And I was just speaking the truth, but he brought up something that I don't think Leon Edwards, and I think pretty much everybody would agree with me, did not deserve. And he created a massive, massive negative emotional reaction, Leon Edwards. And I guess you could say Colby was trying to get under his skin. Leon later said he was crying afterwards. For a long time, he had a great deal of trouble controlling himself. I mean, that's just not right to me. So let's take a look at this clip just to refresh your memory. And this is where the title of the video comes from, because Colby has some issues, I think, with speech, and he'll sometimes stutter or trip over his words. This routinely happens, and this just led to an iconic moment that I wanted to include. But anyways, just watch the reaction that Leon Edwards has. And again, this is just a fragment of the reaction. As he says later in the post-fight, he went back and was tore up afterwards, had to call his mom, had to have a lot of emotional discussions to trying to settle the pain of losing his father and all that at a young age. But check this out.
Saturday night, I'm going to bring you to a place you never want to be. I'm going to bring you to 7th layer hell.
Okay.
No, I'm bringing you to 7th layer hell. We'll say what's up to your dad while we're there.
Oh.
Like, we know it's all for quote unquote for show, and he's maybe trying to get, people say he's trying to get inside the fighter's head. But think about, these are real people. Think about somebody who's lost their father at a young age and has been dealing with that their entire lives. And then you go out and say something like that to them face to face. And he has like a smile on his face. That's messed up. There's something wrong. There's something essentially evil about that you could go to that place. And so whether or not you want to say he's taking on a role, he's doing it for the fight, he's doing it for the buildup, you have to cross some sort of a line mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I think, to be able to take yourself, even if you're quote unquote like reading from a script, to be able to say that and to do that to somebody and to cause that much emotional pain in somebody with a smile on your face. It's a bit crazy. All right. Now we're going to move on, and I want to talk about this article. Let's see, what is the journal here? I'm trying to find here. Let me pull it up right here. So I've been trying to get my head around what Colby is doing, which is method acting. This is Concordia's Journal of Accessible Psychology. So this is called Method or Madness, exploring the psychological effects of method acting. So check this out. If we go down to this section, method acting more than just pretending. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So it says, one of the psychological problems seen in method acting stems from actors' inability to distinguish their role from reality when they dive deeply into the mind and emotions of their character. The term post-dramatic stress was even coined by Mark Seaton, a prominent researcher in theater performance, to describe the intense form of boundary blurring that method actors experience when they lose themselves in a character. This can result in them bringing their role into their daily life, often with negative consequences. It seems like perhaps that's what Colby's doing. But again, I think this quote-unquote character, which he kind of maintains the majority of the time when he's on stage or in interviews or whatnot for years and years, may be rooted or grounded in some of his intrinsic characteristics, some things that I'm going to show in a second, people talking about his past and some negative behaviors and so on that were rooted in there, it seems like, from the get-go, but now they've been exacerbated by this quote-unquote character where he, as in his own words, is turning the volume up to 11, and his character just seems to be devolving at a rapid rate, almost like his morality seems to be declining. And again, I'm just trying to analyze. I don't know Colby personally. I'm just trying to piece the puzzle together because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot over the years, even when I saw the presser with him and Jorge Masvidal, kind of scratching my head thinking, wait a minute, I know he's supposed to be just like putting on an act. Joe Rogan and many people have talked about this, but now he's really digging in deep and attacking Jorge personally, inciting a lot of anger and negativity. So what's really going on? How can you say that's an act when Jorge's emotions and reactions are legitimate? Okay, we're going to keep going here. In a groundbreaking study conducted at McMaster University, Brown and colleagues found neurological evidence indicating that method actors can indeed lose their sense of self. In their experiment, method actors answered personal questions in 3 different scenarios while their brain activity was monitored using functional magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs, or fMRIs. The actors needed to improvise their responses as themselves, as a close friend using the third person's perspective, and as either Romeo or Juliet. The results show that the method acting condition produced the strongest deactivation in the cortical midline structures of the brain, which are associated with the ability to think about the self. According to the authors, this implies that method actors immerse themselves so deeply in the role that they exhibit a loss of self, which can be problematic for performers portraying disturbed or traumatized characters, as it can leave them feeling unstable and unsafe. So there's some science to this. And I know maybe people think, hey, he's just building up hype. He's making a living. He's doing what he can do to make as much money as possible and to drive up pay-per-view sales while he's active in the UFC. Go for it, man. Do your thing. But as it appears to me, and I think many other people would likely agree, if you see what's happened to Colby's life as a result, I think there's been a ton of negative consequences. And I think this may have actually had long-term, potentially irreversible effects on his personality and this character. He was just talking to at Tampa Bay openly about how he can't stay at the fighter hotel because so many fighters have problems with them. So it's not just a fun act that he's thrown up on stage and that he's cool with everybody. People really don't like him. So we're getting into dangerous territory. Now, I wanted to also talk about what is evil. And I know that's a strong word. I'm not saying Colby is, it's a very strong word, but there's a really interesting video from Jordan Peterson talking about, I guess you could say, the psychology being bad, really is what I'm talking about, right? Just being bad-natured, a negative person, negative energy. But this video is called I think it's the psychology of evil people. So I want to play some of this for you because this little snippet from Jordan Peterson, I think, describes maybe what's happening to Colby. All right, check this out.
Movement from normality to absolute perversity is a consequence of 10,000 micro, what would you say, micro violations of your own conscience. Not all of them micro, obviously. So you need to know about the vengefulness. You need to know about the kick of sadism. That's that novelty kick that produces a dopaminergic kick that heightens.
And again, sadism is this idea of getting pleasure from hurting or harming others. And obviously he's a fighter, but I'm not talking about the fighting aspect, but maybe that's part of it. But I'm talking about the way he hurts people negatively with his words and the statements, because he's saying deeply, deeply hurtful things. So perhaps there's some element of sadism that's being heightened by the repetitive actions that he's taking at the press conferences, or the interviews, face-to-face interactions, etc.
Sexual satisfaction. And so there's an element of sadistic misery that can add novelty to sex. That's particularly attractive to people who are bitter and resentful because they actually can't find any willing sexual partners. And so they're angry at the world and shake their fist at God because of it. And so anyways, that's a bit of the developmental course of such a lovely descent into hell. And
so again, I think the point that he's making is, and again, I'm theorizing here. I'm not a psychologist, not a scientist. I don't have a background in any of this. This is just something that I started to do some research on and try and piece this puzzle together, because I'm fascinated, equal parts fascinated, equal parts disturbed of what seems to be happening to Colby Covington and the reputation that he's developed, and sort of like the horrendous nature of the things he's saying. But essentially what he's saying is, little by little, step by step, as you push the needle further and further, your character can start to devolve and almost disintegrate into this negative space where I guess theoretically you essentially can become a bad person day by day by day, but not necessarily all at once in a flash, or not even necessarily that you're completely born that way, but you can descend that way as you continue to go down this avenue little by little. Anyway, so there's that statement from Jordan Peterson. Now I want to go back into people that have talked about Colby from the past. So again, this now goes back to the idea that maybe there were some elements from the very beginning, some little cracks in the armor, if you will, that sort of showed, hey, maybe there was a potential propensity to be a negative guy, to be a bad guy. If some of these inherent character flaws that maybe were always there, but now they've all been heightened and exacerbated by him just coming out and embracing all the negativity. So this is an interview with Jon Jones, who knew Colby back when they were in college. They actually used to be roommates. So first we're going to listen to this, and then I'm going to move on to two other folks that talked about him.
The Colby Covington fight's on Saturday, and you go way back with him, and a lot has been made. Is this an act? Is what he's doing? Is it real? Is it really him?
Yeah.
You've known him for a long time. Was that him back then?
Yeah, Colby's a habitual liar at the end of the day. He really is. I mean, he told the fans that we lived together for 2 years. We lived together for 1 semester. He's just, I've made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of people don't consider me to be a good person, but I mean, coming from me, Colby's a really bad person. He really is. He really, really is. I mean, there's no coincidence that, Tyron Woodley got to know him and hates him. Masvidal got to know him and hates him. I got to live with him and really don't like him. If any of you guys got to know him, man, he really is a rotten person. I think the MMA community is going to start to see it over the years.
I think that sort of is where I'm at right now and what I'm trying to grapple with and understand. Because again, when he talks about being a habitual liar, I thought the stuff that he was saying, the excuses he was making, and the nonsensical things he was coming out with about these fights and why he lost these fights, I again thought it was part of the shtick, part of like he knew he was lying and saying nonsense, but he has to keep up the character. But I don't know anymore. And now we have Jon Jones coming out from way back, knowing Colby from the get-go, apparently had issues speaking the truth. So there we go. Now let's take it to the next guy. As we all know, Jorge Masvidal, who was purportedly best friends with Colby for a long time. So let's listen to this. This is during the lead up to their fight when they eventually did fight. And by the way, I rewatched that fight as well. And when I remembered it, when I watched it live, and I thought, man, Colby really dominated Jorge. But now I watched it back very recently, and it actually doesn't look that way. It makes the performance against Leon Edwards and Joaquin Buckley less surprising now that I look back at that there were several things that happened. He poked Jorge Masvidal in the eye early on, and there was no stoppage at that point. I think there was something, I can't remember what else. There were some other illegal fouls, but it looked like Colby was fighting pretty dirty, and it wasn't that much of a landslide. But anyways, hey, had it not been for those illegal strikes on top of that, or had Herb Dean actually given Jorge a break to stop and get his composure, who knows how the fight would have gone. I'm just saying. But anyways, so listen to what Jorge now also says about Colby back in the day.
I first started off with this piece.
What are you
my
first?
coach $12,500 for a fight that my coach coached him his whole career. Then when he had the chance to finally pay back the $12,500, he didn't. So I went out there and paid my coach out of my own pocket. So since then, it was already like, I'm going to you up at some point. Look at him smiling. Can't even keep a straight face. Yet everybody at American Top Team knows that's why you got kicked out. You're soon to be kicked out of this gym, too, because you don't pay your bills. And you're drowning in debt from all the loan sharks. Your money in South Florida in the poker. You know what? You know what? You know what's going to happen to you if you don't pay money, too. Keep smiling a little and wait to break those fake teeth.
So if you listen there now, we have Jon Jones talking about him being a habitual liar. Then we have Jorge Masvidal talking about these issues of honesty, of keeping his word in terms of an agreement that he had with his coach. Now, Colby later came out and said, no, everybody we get 5% or 10%. There's a deal at American Top Team. I paid into the gym. Everybody knows that. And I feel like anybody who has a decent amount of discernment when people are talking, I feel like you can, like, why would Jorge make this up? It doesn't seem like Jorge is whatsoever lying about this. I feel like he's telling the truth. And I feel like there probably was a deal at the gym where he had to kick in 5 or 10%, but I bet you that was an external deal is what makes the most logical sense to me. And Colby's trying to act like that handshake or that deal was never made. I think he's, again, clearly lying about it. That's what he says. And he never said that until I think their actual presser. That was the defense that he brought up. But another instance of maybe these character flaws peeking through the cracks at an early stage and now just coming out and him almost embracing this like negative person, I guess, that he is. Okay, last clip here we're going to show, or second to last clip. Now we're going to show Tyron Woodley talking about Colby, knowing him back in the day. He's also got more negative stuff to say about Colby. Check this out.
I told Colby the last day that he trained with me, I said, Colby, you a dick. And I said, today, if you act like you getting out of an armbar, or if you don't submit to a choke, or if you get mad that I took you down and have an attitude, and I'm a fucking 2-time All-American Hall of Fame wrestler, like I'm not supposed to take you down. If you run from me, I'm going to break your fucking arm today. I'm going to choke you out. I'm going to knock you out. If you run from me and you run off the mat like you've been doing all camp, I'm going to follow you on the carpet and I'm going to commence to beating your ass. We got that clear? He said, yeah. And we sparred and he left the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's real shit.
You take this on top of the fact that he was kicked out of American Top Team. Then the team that he moved to is no longer training with them. As we all saw in his last fight, who does he roll up with? Chael Sonnen and Hulk Hogan. Very bizarre. So, I mean, you got to add all these things together. It's like he's just leaving. He's just burning down bridges. He's leaving just a trail everywhere he goes of people that just don't want anything to do with him. And once again, we just come back to this conclusion of, I think, a confluence of maybe some character flaws and issues stemming from the past that were always there. And then on top of that, this character that he plays is supposed to be super outlandish and saying very controversial things, just melding together. And with these little, like, step by step, just evolving into a, I guess, worse and worse of a character and a person to what we see today. And the clip I'm going to end on is this live stream that he's now doing. He's doing like these live streams on Twitch, which I think it seems like he's preparing himself to transition. He's now like 36, so maybe he's going to have 1 or 2 more fights left in the UFC, maybe more. He claims he had a 5-fight deal. But I don't know if that's true or not. But again, just to hear what the types of things he's now saying and where he's at. And again, I was always of the opinion, or for a while, that he knows that what he's saying is nonsense, but I don't know now. So you guys be the judge. Check this out.
I mean, dude, that was a bullshit stoppage. Let's be honest, dude. Like, I was still in the fight. I was getting takedowns. He was getting slower. None of his punches did any significant damage, like drop me or hurt me. You know, I just had one. I feel like there was an eye poke or something, like not an direct eye poke, but like an inadvertent one where the eye and the thumb got caught on the eyelid, and that's what caused the cut. So the cut's what did all the damage. I couldn't see. I was out of one eye, guys. So who's going to fight on one eye? Like, I'll always fight. I'm a warrior. That's what I signed up for. I love this shit. Let me go out on my shield, though. It's a bullshit stoppage, fake stoppage, you know, another fucking cheat job, but we come back stronger. We never give up. You know, spirits aren't down. Still believe in the process and that we're going to keep winning fights and making America great again.
So there we end it. Colby Covington's descent into whatever this is. Is this the real Colby? Is this Again, some mixture of this crazy character he started to play that's now also become part of his actual personality. I don't know what's happened, but here we are. Anybody who saw the Joaquin Buckley fight knows deep down I don't even know if he knows, actually. I don't even know if he knows. But anybody else who objectively saw that fight can obviously say that Joaquin Buckley was dominating the entire fight. And Colby should feel blessed and happy that it was stopped the way it was stopped, because at least he can say this. And at least he can say, I guess, save some face and maybe push himself up to try and get somewhat of an interesting fight or a big fight after this, because he didn't get knocked out. He didn't get, and I think he was 100% on his way to getting knocked out in the next couple of rounds. It felt like he was slowing down. He himself said after the fight that, hey, that wasn't too bad for no training camp. He was starting to take some deep breaths. He was going to be in a lot of trouble. And now I believe is the first time that Colby is out of the top 5. I'm going to double check right now. If I'm not mistaken, I believe now he's ranked 9th. Checking right now in the welterweight division. Yeah, he's ranked 9th below Gilbert Burns. Ian Machado Gary is ranked 7th. So that's where we're at with Colby. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about the research that I pulled up and where you stand on who he is, just in terms of a person, the character, not a character. Is he a bad guy? Let me know your thoughts. And also let me know who you think you should fight next. I think there's one name and one name only. And I think now it makes more sense than ever. Ian Machado Gary is ranked above Colby. So that would actually be a positive for Colby. Let's let all that smack talking, all that negative stuff you said about him and his family and his wife. Again, Ian's not a bad guy. So what gives you license to go after him? I know a lot of times Colby will say, hey, I'm speaking the truth. I'm going after bad people and I'm saying stuff that I should be able to say. Well, what's so bad about Ian Gary? Maybe there's things you don't agree with about in his personal life, but who cares? Number one. And number two, he's not a bad guy. He's a family guy. He is committed to his wife, and you mercilessly attacked him. Fight him. Let's see that. I think that would have a ton of heat. I think that would be a huge fight, either as a co-main or a main event, depending on what card is placed on, Fight Night or UFC main card. So that's where we're at. Thank you guys so much for joining. Click that like button if you did like the video. Make sure to click subscribe if you want to see more from the 10-7 MMA show. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we will see you in the next video. Take it easy.